My name is Richard Daffrin, and at the present time I'm taking care of my mother, who is 86 years old, and in what we would consider the final stages of Alzheimer's.
How long has she been ill, Richard?
She's been ill for approximately 10 years and has needed constant care for the last 6 years, of which myself and my wife have been taking care of her, my sister, and some of our other family members.
So she's lived with you or someone in the family for 6 years?
Yes, yes, sir.
Oh, okay, great. Jim?
My name is Janie Clark. I provide care for my father. He had a cardiac arrest in '97. When he got out the hospital, he came to my home. I work, and I also take care of my dad.
So it's you and your dad in the house?
Yes. I have other family members, but some of them could not handle the fact of being able to have to take care of a person that had to be dependent upon them. So I didn't want him to go in a nursing home, so I chose to take care of him myself.
Okay. And Carol?
I'm Carol Gratz. I'm not a primary caregiver. I'm the daughter. My mother's had dementia, I would say, for about 5 years after her second and last stroke. She's needed supervision with just about everything. My dad, who's 85, my mom is 80, my dad is 85, and he's the primary caregiver. I am a physical therapist in critical care, so I'm kind of like the guide in terms of trying to help him manage.
Yeah.
And we all do what we can.
Does being a medical practitioner, has that helped, hindered you?
I think it's helped a great deal.
In what way?
Although it's a huge challenge, I think that because of the clinical experiences that I've had, I think that's helped me a lot in being sort of a guide to them. You know, the more I know, the more I read, the more I learn. I have learned a great deal, and I think that's helpful in helping my dad and helping my mom. So yeah, I think it's a definite benefit that I'm in the field that I am.
Philomena, maybe you should let them all know who you are.
I'm Philomena Rumbaugh, and my husband, Bob, has dementia. He's been in a nursing home for a little bit over a year. He was diagnosed in 1994, but there were obvious signs before that we just didn't see. He was rather young, I think, when he was diagnosed, and probably a couple of years after that, he needed a lot of care, and then, of course, he needed so much care that I did put him in a nursing home.
So what we're going to be focusing on is caregiver burnout and emotionally how you all have dealt with your loved ones in this disease, and both the good and the bad. I think we want to share with people, if you're willing, what are some of the hard things that you've been through, but what's helped you get through, what lessons have you learned, that sort of thing. Maybe we could just start with, I mean, has anyone felt overwhelmed, burned out?
I think everybody that has somebody who's taking care of somebody with Alzheimer's has to feel burned out at one point or another. You get to the point where you just have to get away from the situation because it's like taking care of a baby who is grown up. I needed to be away from him because he wore me out so much, and I knew I was breaking down too. Since I was all of a sudden the breadwinner in the house, I had to do something. And the only recourse I had was to say, okay, I've had enough. It's time for someone else to take care of him.
So Philomena, how did you know that? You said you were very angry.
Angry. I was angry with the world. I was angry at him for getting the disease. I was angry at him for not being able to take care of me. I was angry at him because all of a sudden I had to give up everything that I planned for in my whole life. And when I would sit there and look at him and know that I wanted to hurt him, I knew it was time to give this man, it was time to give this man a break too. It was time.
Yeah. So in addition to being angry, you were physically overwhelmed?
Oh yes, I was the only one that was doing things. There was no one else to help me take care of him other than daycare, but I worked
Yeah.
at the same time, and I would pick him up and go home from work, and we would be up 24 hours a day after that.
So you weren't sleeping?
Wasn't sleeping, no, and most of all, I would just look at him and know that I just knew I could no longer take care of him.
Yeah. Anyone else have that feeling of just being overwhelmed at any point?
Sometimes I do, but I've been able to overcome a lot of it because I have some very good friends that if I say, hey, look, I need a break, they're willing to spend a little bit of time to help me do some things for myself.
Janie, what are some of the things, though, that you notice in yourself that let you know you are getting overwhelmed or very stressed?
When I start turning around in circles, like I don't know where to start something or where to end something, I find that my day is long, and sometimes I have to tell myself, okay, it's time to go to bed, because I'll try to, either if I'm not doing something physically, I can be sitting on the couch looking at TV, but my brain is going, oh, well, what do you have to do the next day to prepare for the next day for him, and not only for him, for myself.
You said before that sometimes you find yourself going in circles, and that tells you you're overwhelmed.
Well, I have a tendency of, if I leave a room and have something on my mind to do, and I may leave out of the room and then forget what I left out the room for. So I have to go right back where I came from and think, okay, what do you leave this room up, what do you leave out here for? So I go back and then I remember. And then just sometimes I just have to stop because I get frustrated or I get maybe confused about things, especially if things don't go my way.
Yeah. Richard, how do you know when things are getting to be a little bit too much?
Well, I would always get very agitated with myself and get sharp in answering my wife or the children. And that's not my nature. It wasn't never my nature. But it was still the constant thing there that my mother didn't know who I was, doesn't know who I am, and that's steadily gotten worse. But after I started going to these group therapy sessions and reading your book, and a couple other books on Alzheimer's, and talking with my sister, and getting help from her, support, and my wife helping me, and us working as a team now in order to take care of my mother, it makes it a lot better.
Things have been better. You've mentioned so far lots of coping skills. Carol, you're in a little different situation because it's really your dad who's the primary caregiver, but do you ever get to that point yourself, or do you recognize in your dad that he's overwhelmed?
Yes.
How about for you, yourself?
I don't really have a lot of time. I don't really think about me that much, to be honest. But I've noticed in my dad, he was always a person that worked all his life. Never a bad word came out of his mouth. He was always patient and kind, and he became impatient. And I could tell he was depressed, and I could tell that he was just getting burnt out. So I talked with him, I talked to his physicians, and I said, I think my dad's depressed, and I can understand that. What do you think? And he was put on Zoloft, and he's a lot better with that. I recommended daycare, and he was resistant. She always needs me. She always calls for me. And I said, well, Dad, I'm going to take off one day, and I just want to look at a couple things with Mom. And I had already checked into all these things and gone to places. And I went to the one I thought sounded the best, and I took my mom, and I explained to her on the way over that we were going to a place where she could be a volunteer.
Yeah.
And she goes there 3 days a week. And it's been wonderful for my dad. I now have him going to, he takes classes. Monday he goes to a current events class. Wednesday he goes to opera class. Friday he volunteers for Meals on Wheels. And he's doing things.
It sounds like one of the things that you noticed is what Richard mentioned, which was, in a way, your dad almost underwent a personality change. He became irritable and easily upset, and that wasn't him. And Richard, you said the same thing about yourself. Has anyone had actual physical problems or symptoms, you think, as a result of being a caregiver? Losing your appetite, not eating. You mentioned, Philomena, not sleeping.
Not sleeping, hypertension, most of all not sleeping, and then of course trying to go into work the next day, and as you said, just snapping at people, which is totally unlike me. That's not in my character at all. And when you try to get up every morning and you know you're tired and you think to yourself, I hate starting this day. I hate for this day to come. You know you're in trouble then.
Mm-hmm. So some of the symptoms that you've mentioned are becoming irritable, caregiver becoming irritable, feeling discouraged or overwhelmed, tired all the time, pessimistic about the next day, the future. Those sound like they're all signs of burnout or whatever we want to call it, being overwhelmed. Yeah. So the stress really shows up both physically and sort of psychologically. Now, you've mentioned already kind of lots of things that have helped. I guess we should spend a good bit of time on that. I guess one thing, I forget already who mentioned it, but the idea of trying to keep your own interest in your own life going as much as you can. Is that?
I have my grandchildren and my children who come there and help me with my mother, my wife and I with my mother. And they spell us every once in a while.
Uh-huh. So getting
Because-
help from other people?
Yes, they're here lately in the last 2 years, I guess. My children, my 2 older girls, they come and help. And
So they
say-
volunteered. You didn't
Yes,
need to
no,
ask
they
them.
volunteered.
They could see there was a problem, and
They come in and they just take over, because they say, well, you guys need a break, go ahead.
yeah.
So they come in and take my mother and they take care of her and they give her a bath, do her hair, they do everything, that my wife and I would be more too timid to try to get my mother in the bathtub. My daughter just snaps her up and just goes in there and puts her in the bathtub and starts taking care of her. She's had some nursing training, but she's not a nurse. With the kids come in and help us.
And that makes a big difference.
That makes a big difference because we all talk about it. We all talk about the same problems. And having that person there, whether it be my daughters or my wife or whoever, that I can talk to and they can talk to me about my mother is a big help.
Yeah.
Being able to talk about it and knowing all the things that are involved in taking care of my mother from the ground up, and being able to talk about it with my kids, them being understanding of what we're going through. Yeah, I'm a lot nicer guy now.
Yeah. Now, Philomena, you said before that you didn't really have anyone in the family to turn to.
No, my daughter, as I said, was not patient with this disease or kind with this disease, and I think it's just a reaction from being a daughter and, not wanting to see this happen to your father. I had the support group, of course, they were the ones that I turned to. I went back to church and prayed and asked God to help me through this ordeal, and thought that I needed some strength. Now, I have to tell you, too, that I hadn't been to church for a long, long time, and this was my way back to Him, and maybe that's why this happened. But another thing that I did was I started keeping a journal to write down all of my thoughts and my feelings. And so when I got those feelings down on paper, I seemed to be able to say to myself, okay, they're out. It's over. And that relieved me a lot, too.
So actually talking to people, getting it out on paper, that's helped. You said something like that as well, Jenny. You talk with your friend.
I have one girlfriend that took care of a great aunt. She had told me of the things that she would do. And there's a couple of my friends that sometimes Dad and I have a confrontation, especially about his money. And I say, okay, he's forgotten all about it, but I'm mad now, so I'll call up a friend and say, hey, look, come get him. I need a break. And I have a few friends that will do that, to give me that little avenue to just get out and just become separated from him for a while.
So recognizing when you're at the breaking point, that sounds like it's a big help.
Yeah, I know me pretty good, and I guess, and the people that are around me, I know them pretty good, and so I can tell when I need a break, and whether it's for a minute or 2 or 15 minutes, sometimes just leaving the space in the house, just going to another part of the house, it helps.
Yeah. But the idea of getting away from it for a little while.
Yes, for a little while.
Talking to people to help getting away from it. Has anyone found that support groups are helpful from an emotional point of view?
My dad does not care for them. I took him to one as soon as this happened, and he just didn't like it, and he doesn't I've tried to bring that up again. And I don't want to hear people talking about their problems. I know all about that. I don't want to do that.
Anyone else have a negative experience in support groups?
I've had experience, but it's not negative on my part. It got me to learning what about Alzheimer's and what it was about and how it affected people and how it affected the person who has the sick person, who has no idea what they're doing 90% of the time.
So you didn't really appreciate before the support group that your mother wasn't doing things on purpose, or?
Well, I thought that she was.
You thought she was?
We thought that she was,
Yeah.
because, like hiding her car keys, right? Then she got lost one time with her car. Then that ended the car keys. We didn't have to worry about that. But then she started losing her pocketbook. Or then she started taking and hiding everybody else's pocketbook.
Now, did the support groups help with that
Yeah,
kind
but
of
I'd
problem?
already been through it. See, I didn't realize that this was the onset of dementia and eventually Alzheimer's.
So people in the group told you that that was the case? Is
Well,
that what
they
it was?
talked about the same thing that I had had, and I said, "Oh, well, I've had that problem before, that's how I found out that this was the bringing on of."
This was a symptom of the disease.
Right.
Yeah. And when you learned that in the group, was that beneficial from an emotional point of view?
Yes, it
learning
was.
that?
Yes, it was, and it helped me to find out that I had already been through that. These other people were just getting into it, and they want to know how they could stop them from doing it. You can't stop them from doing it. They're going to do it. That's just what happens. That's what they do. And it was beneficial to me to be more understanding of my mother as far as that was concerned. Everything that happens as far as my mother, the more understanding you are of it, or the more knowledge you have of what she's doing and why she's doing it, the better you'll be, the better off the caregiver will be, because you have more understanding for it.
Jenny, have you gone to support groups at all?
Yes, the support group that I have a respite program now where I can take him with me. A lot of times that when I'm there, if there's not information that I need, there's always information that I can share with someone else. Because a lot of times when people come in, as you said, they're looking for answers, they're looking for solutions. And I may have gone through an experience or something similar that I can share with somebody and or even encourage someone. We had one lady that had a problem with her mother because her mother would accuse her of taking her money. And by her feeling like the child, she didn't know how to take, she didn't know what to do. She was just overwhelmed. So what a lot of us did, we talked to her and said, let her know that, look, you no longer can play the child role. And I told her, as I had to do, I had to step forward and become the person to take care. You are the care provider. You are the caregiver. And that turned a lot of things around for me, because now I don't let people dictate to me what to do. I know what I have to do. So when you share your experience with other people in the group, it helps them. So the support group helps me, and it also helps me to help other people.
Yeah. So the sharing helps
It
both
does.
directions.
Both
it helps
directions.
you emotionally in a way, but it sounds like you feel like you're helping other people by giving them information.
Right, I do. And on the same note, there's one lady, and she's been around taking care of her mother for 10 years. So she has a list of things, and whenever something comes up that we need, like if we need to know how to get in touch with the Commission on Aging or a lawyer, she says, okay, let me give you that information. I'll send it to you, or I'll email you to. So everybody has something to share, I feel.
Yeah, and give others in the group. Yeah.
Yeah.
Philomena, you mentioned that you'd gone to support groups. Was that always a positive thing for you?
When I first began going to the support group, it was not a positive thing. I went and listened to everybody talk and listened to all the horrible things that were going to happen, and I didn't want to hear it. And so I backed off and said to myself, this is not happening to my husband. This is not happening to me. And I walked out and didn't want to go back. Well, months later I did go back because it was happening, and it was a fact. So I went back to the support group, and it was a place where I found I could be comfortable telling them absolutely exactly how I felt about things, even if I thought other people who would just shriek from it. I knew that they would understand. I knew that they had gone through the same things, and it was a place where anything I could say about this disease and how I felt about it could be acceptable.
Now, I know that for a lot of people, the issue of having a loved one go to daycare, respite, nursing home, I mean, that's one of the harder points. I mean, and you all are at different stages of that, but are there things that you've been through that helped you in a positive way cope with that? Or with your dad, anything?
Yeah, he doesn't like to go there because sometimes he'll say to me, I don't know if this is the right thing for her. Maybe we should look someplace else. And I'll say, Dad, let's you and I just go and be in the background and just observe. And he did that once, and we saw how social she was. My mom has this, still, thank goodness, has her superficial cordiality. She really can still smile and try to take care of everybody. She'll walk in and how are you and how are you?
But that
You
made
know,
it easier for your dad to see that this was a good experience.
That's why I took him, because I wanted him to see that in fact she was happy.
Yeah.
She really was doing fine. She's stimulated, she's active, it beats sitting at home, just sitting there.
But did he feel guilty about that she was actually doing better there than at home sometimes?
I don't think he felt guilty when he saw her interacting. I think he felt just good about
Good
that.
about that, yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a cycle, and it just is a domino effect. When that patient's feeling better, then all the caregivers feel better.
And the opposite's true, of course, too. I guess if the patient's not doing well, that drags the
Where we all
caregiver
feel-
down. And I think, until something like this happens to you, I'm not sure you can really imagine what a life would be like living with a person who has a disease. I don't think you can imagine it by reading a book or talking to someone ahead of time. So knowing that it could happen, I think you're right. We are all at risk. But I think it's the experience of caring for someone, it's not really imaginable without facing it. And maybe that's why support groups work so well, because everyone else in the room is going through it, and so you share that experience. Whereas people who aren't experienced with it, they can't quite know what it's like.